All right. Thank you for joining us for another interview with the Georgia Track and Field and Cross Country Coaching Collective. Today, I'm joined by Kendra Houghton of Oconee County and a state championship coach and has coached many top individuals as well as top teams, including this past fall's boys state championship team and state champion Aaron Broderick. So welcome, Kendra. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. I think we'll start off with kind of a basic question we like to find out from all coaches, which is what got you into coaching? What was it that led you to this profession?
Well, a number of things. Track and cross country have always been a big part of my life from a foundational level. My dad was a high level collegiate track and field athlete who I always looked up to. And I just grew up learning so much about track and always being interested in it. And then, of course, ran in middle school and high school and then some in college. But I also always felt that I had a strength for and a desire to guide and encourage others. I just always knew that was my purpose. So in college, I majored in health and physical education with an intention to become a teacher and a coach, which I loved. I'm still really glad that I did, but I discovered at the end of that degree that teaching and coaching would mean dealing with all people, whether they wanted to be there or not. And I do so well working with those who are all in, very much desiring to be there and make themselves and everybody else around them better. But it was going to be really difficult for me to work with students who did not care. I wasn't able to get past it, and I would continue to try to get them to try to care. So I decided it would be best of both worlds to stick with coaching, but then get my master's in health promotion and behavior and work with adults and work in that field in a different way, but keep coaching part of my life, because we know that with coaching, kids choose to be there. They want to be there. They're passionate about what they're doing. So I knew that was going to be a better fit for me.
Gotcha. Now I'll go ahead and mention you're a product of Chattahoochee High School and UGA. So
Yes,
I love the coaches that stay in state that are from a product of the state of Georgia. So you fit in that
absolutely.
category. Um,
Absolutely.
so let me piggyback on something you just said, because as an educator, I struggle with the whole kids that don't want to be there.
Yeah.
And occasionally we get kids like that on the team. Maybe mom and dad has said, you're doing this, and sometimes that works great. I've had girls in the past whose parents pushed them into it and then they love it.
Mm-hmm.
But then you can get the flip side of that too. So what are your thoughts on how to handle that athlete that maybe in the beginning is hesitant about being out there?
Very good question. You don't get it quite as much as you get the athletes who are choosing to be there, obviously, but you do get some whose parents say you have to do something. Track and cross country typically don't do cuts, so a lot of times if you're going to need to choose a team, that's the logical team. And I have had a number of athletes throughout the years who did not choose to be there. Some did not want to be there from beginning to end the entire time that they were part of the program. Some sort of softened and some became super passionate about the sport. So I continue to show every athlete, even those who have expressed not wanting to be there, either verbally or just with their actions, that we're there to help them become a better person and a better athlete. And if they want to seek out advice or guidance or help in some way, we're there to do that. But that we, as the adults leading them, know that we cannot force them to want to be there. We can't force them to want to do it. So just showing them that we're not threatening them with that pressure to make them become passionate about something that they're not. But also I try to make it pretty clear that we don't want to waste their time and we don't want them to waste the coaches and the other athletes' time. We don't want their lack of desire to be there to harm those around them. So finding that balance is difficult, but I've found that many times that gets someone to turn their mind around a little bit,
Yeah.
and start to become more interested in the sport.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have good, cross country track kids. They're good kids, and so I think a lot of
Yes.
times, even if they don't want to be out there, they're going to be polite. They're going to follow the rules, and then maybe they don't choose to come out the next year. But
Right.
as long as it's not interfering with the team, which just kind of sounds like what you're saying too.
Exactly. And they all want something different from it. Some
Mhm.
want to become better athletes. Some just want to be part of an organization. Some just want to get in shape and don't want to race. But we do have to have common goals as a team, and those boundaries and those rules that everybody has to follow.
Right.
So if it's not the place for them, then it's best that they don't harm somebody else's experience.
Right. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, so since you came into this as an athlete first, I'm imagining you have some mentors that helped you along the way, both in your running career and then in your coaching career, maybe in the past or even currently. So, is there any mentors you want to mention that have helped you?
Absolutely. I'd say first and foremost, again, my dad. He was a California state champ at Mount Sac Junior College, and he also was a scholarship athlete at KU, University of Kansas, and qualified for nationals and the whole bit. But I don't know of an individual who loves track and field and cross country more than my father. And it's been a joy to learn the sport through him, but also to see him intensify his love for the sport through my coaching. And there's not a greater fan of the athletes that I've coached in the last 20 years than my dad. Um, it's pretty neat. A lot of times the athletes think that maybe I went to Oconee County High School because my dad is so up to date on what their performances are and what all my past athletes' performances are. They just assume that I went to that high school, and I didn't. He's just a true fan of the sport, and he's taught me a lot about it. And as he says, it's the greatest sport on earth. So my dad, first and foremost, but then several other people. My high school track coach, Coach Mike Morris, who's still at Chattahoochee and just doing amazing things with that program. He was my other initial mentor in the sport for sure. He taught me so much, and I always say that my character was more developed through my sport experience in high school and college than through any academic class that I took or any other part of high school or college. So he had a big part in that, and he's just a great model of getting people to enjoy what they're doing, even if it's hard work. He does a really great job of building community and getting people to not accept low standards and to go for things that most other people would never dream that they could accomplish. I've told him a number of times before that I look back and I know the things that I did in high school, I never ever would have come up with the idea to go after those goals on my own. I was more meek, a little more shy, not as courageous. And he just taught me to not accept any limits around me and to not just assume that others were going to be better. So I know for a fact I wouldn't have run the times that I ran in high school. I wouldn't have even thought to try to do that if he hadn't put that idea in my head and made me challenge some people who I otherwise would have been afraid of. So definitely Mike Morris. And then through my coaching career, coaches that I've worked with and met through my career, Brady Sigler. We coached together years ago, and he's been at a number of different schools throughout Georgia. And most people know his incredible resume of so many accomplishments, many state titles, team titles, individual titles. But then also just sensational athletes that he has developed. And he and I still keep in touch weekly. And I admire what he's done so much, but then it's also really neat to hear him reach out frequently and ask me for my input on things, and boost me as a coach. It's almost surreal. But then also Coach Josh Mize, who I've worked with for many years. He and I coached at Oconee County many years together, before he went to Jefferson, and now he's coming back to the OC. But it's fascinating to see he and his coach from high school, Rick Moore, who you coached with for many years at Mill Creek. It's fascinating to me to see two people love the sport of track and cross country so much and become experts coaching something that maybe they did not do. So, for instance, pole vault, and then working with cross country. If Josh Mize did not pole vault, but he has just mastered the craft of coaching pole vault, and I just think that that's amazing. I know he was inspired to do that by Rick Moore. So I just love seeing that they never stop learning. They never stop trying to fine tune their craft. And I reach out to them regularly still to check on rules or to make sure I'm remembering something right or bounce some ideas off of them. It's just really neat to have that community.
Yeah, that's great. I'll give a shout out to Mike Morris on his shoe game. He has awesome shoes. Yeah. I remember a few years ago, he was wearing a pair of shoes that I wore in high school. He had found them online somehow. I was so impressed. Yeah, he told me that's one of his things is having great shoes.
His thing. He never understood why we just had one pair of running shoes and would run in those till they were dead and moved on to the other.
Yeah.
Not with more. He does have shoe game.
Yes. All right, so next, this one might be kind of hard to narrow down, but can you try to describe your coaching philosophy for us?
I can try. Like I said before, love the idea of not assuming anyone has any limits. I don't like to pigeonhole someone into one area. Like, I don't want to just assume that they're more of a cross-country runner and then in track they should be a 2-miler, or someone is just an 800 runner. So my kids know when freshmen come in, they typically are going to say, I'm an 800 runner or I'm a 2-miler. And they just laugh and say, wait till she gets to you, because here you're going to try it all. Here you're going to train to get better at every aspect of running so that you can actually discover where your most potential is. And I really feel like a very well-trained athlete is one who does work on speed and turnover, that does work on improving their endurance, lessening muscle fatigue, but also focusing on rest. I don't like to allow them to pick their one area that's going to be their specialty or allow myself to do that. I like to keep all the options open, because they develop and grow through those 4 years of high school like crazy, and things change. They may be great at one event one year and then 3 years later be sensational at something else. So I don't ever want to limit them. But B, also for sake of opportunity, Georgia continues to get so much more competitive in cross country and track, and it's so fantastic. But even if someone is stronger in a certain event, they may have a better chance of advancing in another event. So I don't want them to just limit themselves and say that they're not going to go for that because it's not their favorite or it may not be their absolute strength. I usually give my kids the example of, I, for years, said I'm not really a cross-country runner. I run cross-country because we have to if we're distance runners in track. And in college, like many people, I was hurt a lot. I did not have very many great performances or many seasons that didn't involve injury. And the one season that was the most successful for me out of indoor, outdoor, and cross-country was, I believe, my junior year cross-country. Ran in SECs and regionals in cross-country. And if I had just continued to limit myself and just train mid-distance, and kept an attitude of, blocking out something that I didn't think I was as great at, I wouldn't have had a fairly good season in college. So that typically opens kids' eyes. But also, I like to make sure that all the kids know that we're there to make them a better person and make them better at life in general. So we make a big deal whether a kid is trying to break an 8-minute mile or run sub 420 mile. I just think that it's really important for them to know that we're not just out there for the front runners. We're there for everybody on the team, and to show them that that can truly improve everybody's life, no matter what their goal is, what level of running they are.
That's great. I think, yeah, there's always something to celebrate in our sport. Like you said, the kids in the middle to back of the
Oh,
pack and whatever goals they're going for. That's always fun to see their faces when they've accomplished that goal, whatever it is.
absolutely, it is, and it does a lot for even the front runners. You know, the ones that are chasing state titles and beyond. It does a lot for them to see that the sport is not just for the fastest. It's a lifetime sport. It really is, and it develops skills and character traits that will last everyone on the team for a lifetime, regardless of what time they run.
Yes. And then to your first point, if you're like me, you've probably found some, like, for example, relay members from getting to experiment with different events. Like maybe they consider themselves a 2-miler, but then you're like, well, I need to get a time on an 800, and then suddenly, oh, you need to fill in that spot we need in the 4x8.
Yes, keep your options open.
Mm-hmm.
Never shortchange yourself.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, one of the things I love seeing that you guys do, when I see you guys on social media, and this is something we try to do in our program too, is utilizing alumni, utilizing the former runners to come back and talk to the current runners.
Mm-hmm.
And there's definitely you can tell there's a strong sense of tradition in the
Yes.
Oconee County program. So I wanted to see if you could speak to that for us.
Sure. I consider myself very blessed that I've done my entire coaching career at one high school. I know that that's not super common, but I am a community lay coach. So my full-time work outside of coaching is in Athens, Clarke County. So that's where my job is. And so I'm able to coach here rather than moving, to various schools for different experience. So I recognize that's not super common, and I absolutely love that I've had that opportunity to be at the same school for this long, because I'm able to sort of nurture that tradition. All of the kids who've gone through the program, track and cross country, over the last 20 years, I've known very well. And I can typically remember all the stories that are tied in with their training and their failures, their losses, their victories, their challenges, their stories. And I talk about those with the kids a lot. So whether it's someone who graduated 2 years ago or someone who graduated 15 years ago, who's on, up on award boards or the Wall of Fame, I try to talk about them regularly so that these kids have actual real world examples. It's a little bit more relatable to them for me to talk about state champs of the past at their own high school who walked the same hallways than it is for me to give them examples of, famous collegiate runners in some other state. There's that relatability factor there. I try to do with time trials and some really key standout workouts that everybody looks forward to or dreads every year. I try to just pull all of my past stats and make a big to-do of those and show them, who ran the fastest freshman mile time trial in Oconee County history and who ran the fastest sophomore time trial and this and that. Or who accomplished the greatest feat in one of our most difficult workouts, someone who I knew was ready for even a bigger boost challenge, and what they did So I share that, but then also try to bring them back regularly. And typically they pop in anyway. So they leave, go on to do great things with so much pride of their home high school experience that they often follow us without us even asking them to. They stay in touch with me. I feel like they're still family. And they want to know about the current runners, and they rave about them, or they send me letters or messages to read to the kids on the way to state. So we try to keep that real tradition alive for them.
That's awesome. And I'd say that if there's a coach out there that's thinking, like, well, I haven't been at school for 20 years, this doesn't have to be long term. It can be the kids that just graduated last year that you
Yes.
utilize. And yeah, it doesn't have to
Yes.
be the long term. Although if you are in that situation, it's great to have the long
Yes.
term people that maybe they've seen on those record boards or on those lists, but then they put a face with the name. And
Right. And you can always ask around. Obviously there was a rich tradition of distance running before I came to Oconee County High School. I started out working with Coach Gwen Peck, who was an absolute legend to me, and Coach Lynn Eli, who are both retired from coaching and teaching now. But they took the reins from Coach Altman, who just recently passed away, who started the program at Oconee. And I learned a lot from them about the tradition and history of distance running at Oconee. So I actually got to meet some of the past runners who ran for Oconee before I even started coaching there, because I invested in those relationships with those coaches. And I like my dad says, get caught asking. I would ask them who did what, who how the top 5 played out at state cross country the last time that Oconee won the boys state title, which was 20 or so years ago. And we get great stories about that we still share with our current kids. So I would say for new coaches or coaches who come to a school and really want to use tradition to enrich their program, ask around, show others that help build the program that you have respect for what they've done and that you want to continue to use that to enrich the program. You don't want to just cut that off and then start anew.
very good.
Yeah.
All right, a couple more questions for you. What still makes coaching exciting? All these years into your career, what keeps you excited about the next season?
Really, the sport itself just takes that. I always chuckle on the first day of practice every year. I leave it just going, I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I mean, there's no question. I leave the first day of practice so excited to start a new season. And the sports, cross country and track, are both so dynamic, and there's so much competitive nature to them that's just so exciting. They're so exciting on their own. But also seeing kids develop and finally seeing the idea of trusting the process click with them when you have many athletes who are already in that place, and then you have new athletes come in, seeing over the year through so many conversations and so many lessons and so many hard times, but also great times, see it all culminate and then click with a kid that they truly can improve it's just invigorating to me. I mean, it's just phenomenal. So then starting a new season, knowing that that's in store, that's going to happen again, is really exciting. And then just seeing so many kids be interested in competing and being on the team, regardless of how fast they are.
Mhm.
That keeps it fun for me.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to what you said a little bit ago, we talked about how you had Mike Morris as a coach at
Yes.
Chattahoochee, and so since you ran in Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
how does that color how you see the state of Georgia now? You mentioned how we have so many great athletes, cross country and track athletes and teams now. So how does that compare with your experience in high school, where I'm sure there were some great teams, but it's at a different level now?
It's definitely at a different level. Um, it's always interesting when I share stories of my high school running experience with my current runners. I mean, they can't believe that when I was in high school, which, it was not the other day, but it wasn't that long ago. There was only one synthetic track in our entire county. And I mean, we lived in a nice area with some great high schools. But Roswell High School was the only one with a synthetic track. The rest of us had asphalt tracks. But we didn't know any different. And we also didn't have all the crazy varieties of shoes and spikes. I tell my kids that I ran my 216-800 my junior year in flats. They weren't training shoes. We called them waffles, but they didn't have spikes on them. And
Yeah.
they just cannot believe that someone would even attempt to do that, but I didn't know any different. But still, there were incredible runners back then. I mean, Nona Allen is still just someone who's up on a pedestal to me. Yes,
Pope High
that's
School.
who. Yep, Nona Allen, Pope High School, just absolutely incredible. We've always had people like that to chase and to keep the bar really high. I just feel like nowadays there's a larger concentration of those stellar, amazing, great athletes, and then there's so many more programs that are so not top heavy, but have so many people at a higher level that it does make it so much more difficult for even them to advance.
Yeah.
So of course, I'm really glad that we now have the sectionals process.
Yes.
And I'm hoping that we'll continue to work toward an even better solution beyond that. But I think things have improved and gone in a great direction throughout the years. My tragedy story from the past is my 216-800 at my region meet didn't qualify me for state because, you had top two in each region go out of state, and Pope and Chattahoochee were in the same region.
Yeah.
So, that's typically unheard of for a time like that to not make it to state, especially in that time. But, there was an issue with the system, and through a lot of great coaches speaking up and failures and successes and a lot of data compiled, things have progressed. So we have the sectional meet, and that prevents a lot of that from happening. It's not a perfect system, but it makes it a lot better. It gets the people who should be at the state meet at the state meet. So I'm hopeful that things will continue to progress and get better in that way. But all that to say, I feel like there's such a greater concentration of bigger, heavy, awesome teams, which is so exciting, but it does make it frustrating for especially a lot of those Metro Atlanta athletes, kids who would be number one in many other schools around the state who couldn't even dream of getting out of their region with a phenomenal time.
Right.
So it still shows that we have room for more improvement with the system, but also on the other hand shows that it's just so exciting that we have so many great athletes and up and coming programs.
Yes. I'm a big fan of the sectionals as well.
Yes.
Just, 2 athletes per event back in the 90s and all the way through, whenever around 2012, I think we started sectionals or somewhere around there. So many third and fourth place runners that would have placed high at state that didn't get to go. So I'm glad that we have a better system that's also just elevated what it takes to get on the podium now at the state track meets. Definitely a fan of that.
Me too.
The way I wanted to wrap this up was to ask you about general advice you might have for new coaches or rookie coaches, which you've touched on a little bit, but anything that you would say or that you remember being real helpful for you as a new coach?
Yeah. I'd say several things. I definitely have not done it all right in my coaching career, and I consistently learn every single year how to be a better coach. I'd say don't be afraid to continuously learn more about your craft, whether you come in to coaching already knowing the sport well or not. Whether you're an expert or beginner, never be afraid to continue to learn better tactics. The population we coach changes. Obviously, you have a different team every single year, but also kids right now are totally different from kids 15 years ago, and they relate to completely different things. They're interested in different things. They've experienced much different things. So never be afraid to change and learn how to do things better, but also don't be afraid to stick to your guns on things that you think are important, things that you value, even if you have some athletes or parents who disagree. If you have used a coaching tactic or a training method that you have seen produce great results over and over and over, but you have one or two people who disagree with that, respect that they disagree with it, acknowledge that you don't know everything and that you're not perfect. You've made mistakes, but you've also had some success. Acknowledge that you're willing to try some other things, but if you truly believe in something and you have a lot of evidence to show that it does work for many people, stick to your guns with that and be confident. I would say, remember, you're coaching the person, not just the athlete. And at the end of the day, they are children. And those children have a lot of stresses on them. Anxiety is a real thing. I never understood that I was actually going through a lot of anxiety when I was competing in high school and college, because we didn't call it anxiety then. But I know, and I tell my athletes every single day that I can, that if I have been able to get a better handle on the anxiety I was experiencing and chilled out and actually enjoyed what I was doing more, although I did well, I would have done so much better. So I always tell them, don't do what I did. Don't let yourself get paralyzed by fear and stress and anxiety. You have to enjoy the ride. So I encourage coaches who are new to the scene to keep that as a focus and make sure that you help your athletes to enjoy what they're doing, enjoy each other. Remember that you're helping develop a person for the rest of their lives. You're not just trying to produce times. And typically that has a positive result, mental health wise and performance wise.
I love that point, because I think it's easy to forget that we're dealing with 14 to 18-year-olds
Yes.
when we're strategizing, or when something doesn't quite go the way we hoped. And then it's a good reminder that, yeah, these are 14 through 18-year-olds that, like you
Right.
said, are people, not just the points that they put up at the state meet or region meet or whatever it
Right.
is.
And
Uh,
some of them are going to have amazing talent, but not much work ethic. Some are going to be the hardest workers on your team and not be super talented. And you wish you could bottle up one piece and, feed it to the other. And that's why it makes it so special when you have a kid who is talented, but will be the hardest worker on your team and has it all together mentally. But more often, you're going to get kids who have bits and pieces of each of those things and may lack in one area and be better in another, but you can work with them. And that doesn't mean that they're going to stay that way for the rest of their lives, and you can help shape them.
well, thank you so much for all this. I've been a fan of y'all's program and what you've done as a coach, and I'm
Ditto
sure
for
that
y'all.
I know there's going to be continued success. So best of luck coming up here this fall with you and your athletes.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.